Hello, and welcome to carbonwhy, the channel that's catered to those who are avid lifelong learners. My channel explores the how, what, where, why the world works the way it does. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button so that you can get notified of my next video. In this week's episode, we find out why the leading ATV maker is betting on EV. Polaris, the leading ATV maker in the world, produces things like snowmobiles, off-roaders, road-going motorcycles and boats that basically make toys for grown-ups. But Polaris is wary of an uncertain future. So they're taking precautions by working hard on electric versions of all their products, a step that analysts say can dramatically widen their customer base, boost margins and bring in new investors. But there's still a great deal of uncertainty around how much electric vehicles will appeal to customers or suit their needs. And the company also faces the threat of what a contracting economy and disruptions from the lockdown might do to them, as well as the fear of a decrease in the recent boom in powersports. Polaris' origin traces back to 1945 when brothers Edgar and Alan Hatteen and their friend David Johnson started Hatteen Hoist and Derrick in Roseau, Minnesota. Polaris came out with its first product, the snowmobile, in 1955. Edgar and three friends towed 900 pounds of gear on a 21-day, 1,200-mile journey across the Alaskan wilderness, and their trip sparked interest in their snowmobile and sales took off from there. By 1995, the company reached $1 billion in sales, and in 1997 debuted the now defunct Victory Motorcycles brand. Scott Wine, who was appointed chairman and CEO in 2008, led Polaris to achieve new heights and sales exceeding $5 billion in 2017. Polaris opened 3 new factories and acquired Trans-American Auto Parts, which sells aftermarket parts and accessories for Jeeps and other off-road vehicles. Boat Holdings, a privately held boat manufacturer, Timbersled, Taylor-Dunn, Gem, Goldpill and Bamo, and the legendary Indian Motorcycles brand. By 2018, Polaris had over 30 brands under its belt and it was 496 on the Fortune 500 list. As of 2020, Polaris's products were being sold through around 2,300 independent dealers in North America, approximately 1,400 independent international dealers through over 30 subsidiaries, and another 90 independent distributors in over 120 countries outside of North America. Most of Polaris's dealers also sell products from the company's rivals, so Polaris has spent about $300 million in market research and development to keep its products fresh. This seems to be working for them because in the past year, 90% of sales came from products that were created in the last 3 years. And though Polaris got its start as a snowmobile maker, that segment is a relatively small part of their business. Polaris estimates that the industry sold around 125,000 snowmobiles in the winter season that ended March 31st, 2020. Polaris held the number 2 spot in the snowmobile market share in North America that year. The company's biggest revenue generator is off-road vehicles, making up 50 to 60% of its top line. Polaris has a 40% market share in the off-road segment. The company's first ATV debuted in 1984, they then introduced the Ranger in 1997 and later the Razor in 2007. In 2020, Polaris sold about 1.2 million off-road vehicles worldwide, with the majority being to North America. They also sell motorcycles, mainly larger cruisers and touring bikes under the Indian Motorcycles brand, and they make a 3-wheeler called the Slingshot, but it's technically classed as another motorcycle. Polaris has sold around 330,000 motorcycles around the world in 2020. They don't just make land toys, they also sell boats, mostly pontoon boats and deck boats under the Bennington, Godfrey and Hurricane brands. Polaris sells a number of other types of vehicles too, for all kinds of purposes, from defense to commercial work and so on. So Polaris covers a lot of bases. In the outdoor recreation and sporting market, and the business slogan "Think Outside" definitely shows it. And as it turns out, the lockdown has encouraged a lot of customers to do just that. Polaris experienced massive jumps in sales in 2020. North America sales were up by 25% and their global sales were up by 4%. And the company added at least about 700,000 new riders to its base of about 6.5 million in North America. 2020 was a great year for the industry, Polaris in particular. Shelter-in-place orders had people everywhere looking for fun and safe ways to have socially distanced family activities, and the Polaris vehicles offered just that. Expanding ridership is key to Polaris's growth strategy, so the company launched a rental business called Polaris Adventures in 2017. Because Polaris's products are in the range of $10,000 to $30,000, which means for many it's out of their budget, the goal with Polaris Adventures was to lower the entry cost so that more people can enjoy the fun and the lifestyle that Polaris has to offer. The brand also has partnerships with country music star Brandy Gilbert, who uses and promotes Polaris's vehicles and participates in events. Polaris signed a 10-year partnership with Zero Motorcycles, an all-electric motorcycle brand, in 2010. The partnership allowed Polaris to apply Zero Motorcycles technology to its off-roading vehicles and snowmobiles. But this was not Polaris's first step into the electric vehicle world. The brand has some smaller businesses on a more commercial side in campus environments. Polaris also tried their own EV motorcycle a few years ago, but it was unsuccessful. So that partnership allowed them to share the costs with another company while building up on innovation and capability for products like the Ranger and the chassis. And by 2025, the company hopes to offer completely electric versions for all vehicles, the first of which should roll out by the end of 2021. Polaris already offers an electric version of its Ranger off-road side-by-side and a lot of other vehicles and other lines, primarily through its acquired companies. But the challenge with electrification technology is that it just isn't as capable as its internal combustion counterparts in delivering the same kind of performance, range and durability. Yet they still have a high demand for EVs. In January 2021, Morgan Stanley said in a note that Polaris is on the verge of a transformational shift. In the note, it stated that Polaris is already undervalued and electrification efforts can actually considerably widen their total addressable market and catch the attention of customers who are especially excited about EV tech. As for Harley-Davidson, the company faces the issue of an aging customer base. While Polaris enjoys a much younger demographic of buyers, and Polaris has a wider array of products like dirt bikes and off-roaders that appeal to younger buyers and millennials. In 2019, 25% of its sales were to buyers between 24 and 39 years old, and by the third quarter of 2020, sales of that demographic were up by 45%, according to Morgan Stanley. Polaris aims to grow its customer base by a further 40% in the next decade. Morgan Stanley says the younger customer demographic may bode well for Polaris's EV efforts because over the last 10 years, EVs have made up at least 2% of Polaris's total sales. And the firm estimated that could be as much as 10% by 2030. But similar to cars, powersports sales are vulnerable to the ups and downs of the economy. Things like drops in credit lending can prevent customers from being able to buy products. Even the weather has an impact on sales because though winters can keep customers away from dealerships and the lack of snowy winters can mean there's no demand for products like snowmobiles in the first place. And like many, Polaris has suffered some setbacks due to the lockdown. But the company initiated an online sales program called Click, Deliver, Ride to reach customers that were in lockdowns or fearful of heading to stores. But as it turns out, the lockdown caused another problem too: supply shortages. While sales in North America saw a 25% jump in Q4 of 2020, dealer inventory fell by 58%. The lockdown caused plant shutdowns and disruptions to the supply chain. And the ports were jammed, trucking was in short supply. All these made it increasingly harder for Polaris to obtain parts from the supply chain. But Polaris is taking steps to address the shortages and expects to fix it in 2021. Skeptics wonder if the demand boom will last when the lockdown is over, or if the return to regular life will leave customers with more spending options. Mike Speetson, the interim CEO of Polaris Industries, says the company can't expect trends in sales to continue as they are now. Because the business grows by new customers coming in, and new customer growth for 2020 accounts for 60% of the customer growth range, and Speetson attributed that growth to the lockdown. Analysts also say there has been some pressure on Polaris's margins. Craig Kennison, the senior analyst at Baird, says Polaris's margin profile isn't the same, and they're seeing some margin erosion as well. He says that some of it is likely due to extra spending to get around or improve vehicle safety. But some of it is because of tariff pressure. Polaris has a sophisticated supply chain and some of the products are sourced from China. Polaris's electric vehicle strategy is risky. And similar to the debates over electric cars, consumers need to know that the company's electric versions of products will perform as well as gas-powered ones, especially when these types of vehicles are typically used in remote areas and on long trips. There's also even concern about whether making investments in electric motorcycles and off-roaders will pay off in the long run, because most of the urgency on electrification centers on cars and large commercial vehicles that contribute heavily to emissions. While an electric vehicle is nice to have, it might not be enough of a priority for regulators or buyers to justify an investment in. Polaris also faces a lot of competition with rivals like Yamaha, Honda, BRP, Kawasaki, and Polaris's former owner, Textron. But a little competition is good, says Mike Speedson. It keeps everyone on their A-game and forces innovation. Polaris is essentially the largest player in the game, and that's because they have a strong customer base and significant customer loyalty. The lockdown brought on a lot of ups and downs, but for Polaris, the last year has been somewhat positive. The lockdowns allowed the company to attract a whole new crop of customers, and their commitment to electrify all their products has the potential to attract even more investors and buyers. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, please like and subscribe and watch these videos that might pique your interest. Thank you for your support.